The sharp crack of the general's laughter echoed off the hangar walls, cutting through the engine roar. "Hey, Lieutenant," his voice boomed across the flight line. "You polished those bars extra shiny this morning." The officers around him erupted. She stood at perfect attention, her jaw a tight line in the morning sun, her uniform crisp, her rank insignia gleaming. In 30 seconds, her classified code name would turn that laughter into dead silence. She was Lieutenant Mara Vance, a junior logistics officer assigned to the general's command. To every person on that tarmac, she was just another fresh-faced officer, barely worth a glance. But the secret she carried, a classified identity so sensitive it was known only to a handful of people at the Pentagon, was about to shatter the base's chain of command. Because when you mock a ghost, the only thing left to hear is the truth. General Harlan Stone was inspecting his new command, Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, with the swagger of a man who believed the universe owed him respect. He'd flown attack helicopters in Desert Storm, commanded a Marine Expeditionary Unit in the Arabian Gulf, and now, at 58, he'd been given this Plum Air Station command as a final posting before retirement. To him, the base was a shiny toy, and every person on it was a piece to be moved on his board. The junior lieutenant, standing rigidly before him, was barely a footnote. The object of his mockery, Lieutenant Mara Vance, presented a perfect picture of unremarkable military conformity. 24 years old, 5 feet 4 inches tall, her dark hair secured in a regulation bun beneath her cover. Her service uniform was impeccable, her posture textbook. Her file, which Stone had glanced at with boredom, showed a standard trajectory. Naval Academy graduate, bottom third of her class, assigned to logistics. A mover of boxes, a tracker of supply forms. A non-entity. But standing near the hangar's hydraulic service door, Master Gunnery Sergeant Will Brady saw something else. His 30 years in the Corps had gifted him with a predator's sense for anomaly. He watched the lieutenant's eyes. They weren't cast down in humiliation. They were doing a slow, methodical sweep of the entire hangar bay. Left corner, right corner, the catwalk above, the personnel door behind the general. A 3-second scanning loop. Perfect tactical situational awareness. The kind drilled into Marine raiders and Force Recon operatives until it became a nervous tick, not something taught in logistics school. Stone, oblivious, continued his performance for the benefit of his accompanying staff. "You see this, Colonel?" He gestured vaguely at Vance's rank insignia. "These academy kids get their butter bars and think the whole world salutes. Tell me, Lieutenant Vance, is it? What's the most important piece of gear in my entire air wing?" "Sir, the correct answer is the maintainer," Vance replied, her voice clear and neutral. "Without skilled maintenance personnel, no aircraft flies." Stone's smile was thin. A textbook answer, safe, boring. "I asked for a piece of gear, Lieutenant, not a pep talk. Let's try again. The F-35 engine. What's the torque specification for the Stage 4 turbine bolts?" A hush fell over the dozen officers and senior NCOs in the hangar. It was an absurd, gatekeeping question. The kind of minute technical data a crew chief would know, not a logistics officer. It was designed for public failure. Vance didn't blink. "For the Pratt & Whitney F135 engine, sir, the Stage 4 turbine bolt torque is 125 foot-pounds, plus or minus 5. Applied in a 3-step star pattern. The technical manual reference is T01 F35 JE1-2, Chapter 72, Section 4. The smirk vanished from the face of the Air Wing's commanding officer, Colonel Vickers. Stone's eyes narrowed slightly. "Lucky guess. Or maybe you're just good at reading manuals. Let's see how you do with something practical." He pointed across the hangar to a disassembled targeting pod sitting on a maintenance cart. "The LITENING pod. What's the first step in the Boresight procedure after removal?" Master Guns Brady felt a cold trickle of recognition. The LITENG pod wasn't standard logistics fare. Its alignment procedures were specialized, avionics-level work. Vance's answer was again instantaneous, precise, and cited the correct Navy technical manual by number. Stone was no longer amused. He was irritated. The laughter from his entourage had died. The mood shifted from casual bullying to something more charged. The general felt his control of the narrative slipping, and for a man like Stone, that was an intolerable itch. Fine, he said, his voice losing its performative edge. You know books. Let's see you handle something real, Sergeant. A staff sergeant from the Aviation Ordnance Team snapped to attention. Sir, bring me a practice round for the 20mm cannon. The M56A1. Let's see if the lieutenant here knows which end is pointy. This was crossing a line. Humiliating an officer with technical trivia was one thing. Forcing a handling test with live-duty equipment, even a dummy round, in an unauthorized setting was a blatant power play. Colonel Vickers opened his mouth to intervene, but a sharp look from Stone silenced him. The practice round, a heavy, inert replica of the deadly ammunition, was brought over. Stone took it and held it out to Vance. Identify and demonstrate proper carry. Vance accepted the round. Her hands didn't fumble under the weight. She cradled it smoothly, her left hand supporting the body, her right fingers clear of the faux primer. Her thumb rested along the side, not on the nose. It was a flawless, instinctive carry posture that prioritized safety and control. She spoke quietly. M56A1 20mm practice round. Weight, approximately 1 pound. For use in G, a U-12 equalizer cannon. Carry procedure mandates hand placement away from simulated fuse and base. But it was the way she'd taken it, the smooth transition of weight, the absolute lack of adjustment. Brady had seen that fluid, economical motion before. On a dark range in Afghanistan, watching a joint terminal attack controller handle a guided missile with the same casual, intimate confidence. It was the familiarity of thousands of repetitions. Something off, Brady thought, his internal alarms now ringing at full volume. This isn't logistics. This is muscle memory from a different world. Stone, however, saw only defiance. A junior officer had not crumbled. She had met each of his absurd challenges with calm, irritating competence. His ego, a fragile and vast continent, registered this as a direct assault. He needed a win, a public, undeniable win. All right, Lieutenant, he said, a new, colder plan forming in his eyes. You're clearly passionate about procedures. Let's see how you perform under a real evaluation. My staff is conducting a no-notice security drill for the Air Wing Headquarters building in 1 hour. You will report to the building's east entrance at 1300 hours. You will participate as a simulated intruder. Your objective is to penetrate the building's secure core, the sensitive compartmented information facility, the SCIF, and plant a training device. If you succeed, maybe you're in the wrong line of work. If you fail, well, it'll be a good lesson in knowing your place. A wave of unease passed through the officers. The SCIF was the most secure location on the base, protected by armed guards, biometrics, and triple-layered access protocols. Using it as a prop in a power struggle was reckless. The drill wasn't designed for a single, untrained officer to attempt penetration. It was for testing the security force's response. He was setting her up for a spectacular, humiliating failure. Vance's expression remained unreadable. She placed the practice round carefully back on the cart. Yes, sir. Dismissed. As she turned and walked away, her stride was measured, her back straight. Not a trace of anger, fear, or haste. Brady watched her go, then looked at the general, who was now laughing again with his colonel. The tension momentarily diffused for them, but Brady's gaze drifted to the security camera in the hangar's upper corner. He knew the security battalion monitored all feeds. He also knew that the lieutenant's personnel file, the one Stone had scoffed at, was stored in a digital system with tiered access. And he was willing to bet his master gunnery sergeant chevrons that the file General Stone had seen was not the only one that existed. Because while Stone was planning a humiliation, a silent protocol had just been triggered. 30 seconds after Vance recited that talk specification from memory, a discreet alert flashed on a monitor in the base's Security Operations Center. An access attempt, not to a manual, but to a sealed subfolder linked to her service number. A folder with a bright red header that read, "Access requires eyes-only Delta clearance." The security watch officer, a chief warrant officer, stared at the alert. He had EOD clearance. It wasn't enough. The system was asking for a clearance he didn't possess, to view an audit trail he couldn't see. All he knew was that someone somewhere had just tried to touch Lieutenant Mara Vance's real record. And in the world of military intelligence, touching a ghost's file always leaves a trace. He picked up a secure phone, dialed a number not listed in any base directory, and spoke 2 words: Ghost Viper, flagged. The line went dead. Back in the hangar, General Stone clapped Colonel Vickers on the shoulder, already relishing the spectacle to come. He had no idea that his little game had just sent a tremor through a hidden network he didn't know existed. And in exactly 1 hour, when Lieutenant Vance reported for her impossible task, she wouldn't be walking into a drill. She would be walking into a trap of her own making. At precisely 1300 hours, Lieutenant Mara Vance stood at the east entrance of the 2-story, windowless headquarters building. She had changed into a standard physical training uniform, dark blue shorts and a gold shirt, a stark contrast to the combat gear worn by the 20 Marines from the security battalion who were fanning out to establish a perimeter. General Stone observed from a raised observation platform 50 yards away, flanked by Colonel Vickers and a frowning Major Krebs, the security battalion commander. A small crowd of curious personnel had gathered behind the safety tape, smelling blood in the water. Master Guns Brady positioned himself at the edge of the crowd, his arms crossed. He watched Vance. She wasn't stretching or packing. She stood perfectly still, her eyes closed, her breathing deep and controlled. Box breathing, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. A stress control technique taught to reconnaissance Marines and special operators before a high-stakes mission, not to logistics lieutenants before a humiliating drill. Major Krebs keyed his radio. All units, code word for this drill is Mockingbird. Intruder is 1 personnel, female PT uniform. Objective is to reach and mark the primary SCIF door on the 2nd floor. Rules of engagement, simulated force only, no live weapons. Intruder, you may begin now. For a full 10 seconds, Vance didn't move. The security team tensed. Then her eyes opened. She didn't sprint for the door. She walked calmly to a service panel beside the entrance, a gray metal box housing electrical conduits and communication lines. With a small, generic multi-tool produced from her pocket, she removed 4 screws in under 15 seconds, opened the panel, and studied the wiring inside. "What is she doing?" Stone muttered, leaning forward. "The entrance is right there." On the observation platform's radio feed, they heard the security team leader inside the lobby. "Mockingbird 1, no visual on intruder at main entry. She's not at the door." "She's at the service panel," Krebs radioed back, confusion in his voice. "She's looking at wires." Vance's fingers traced a specific bundle of blue cables. She isolated one, applied a small alligator clip from her tool to its shielded casing, and attached the other end to the metal door frame. Then she simply pushed the main entrance door. It swung open without a sound. No alarm blared. The magnetic lock, which should have been engaged, was silent. The security team leader's voice crackled with disbelief. "Mockingbird 1, main door is open. No breach alarm. I repeat, no alarm. How did she?" Stone's face darkened. "She cheated. She tampered with the system." Colonel Vickers, an aviator, understood systems. "Sir, she just identified and bypassed a magnetic lock by creating a ground fault. That's not cheating. That's a very specific, technical intrusion skill. That's not in any standard training manual I've read." Vance was inside. The camera feeds on the observation monitor showed her moving through the lobby. She didn't creep or hug walls. She walked with purpose, like an employee late for a meeting. 2 security Marines rounded a corner, their simulated rifles raised. "Halt, identify yourself." Vance stopped, raised her hands slightly. As one Marine approached, she spoke, her voice calm but authoritative. "Your radio earpiece is on the wrong side, Corporal. Your dominant ear is your right. You've switched it to the left, impairing your situational audio. And your blouse is untucked over your rear right pocket. You're printing the outline of your simunition magazine. Sloppy." The corporal froze, instinctively reaching to adjust his blouse. In that split second of distraction, Vance moved. It wasn't an attack. It was a fluid displacement. She stepped inside his partner's reach, used her forearm to guide the simulated rifle's barrel safely aside, and continued walking down the hall, leaving both Marines momentarily bewildered. She hadn't tagged them in the drill. She had rendered them irrelevant through psychological observation and flawless mechanics. "What was that?" Stone barked. "She didn't even engage them." "She didn't need to, sir," Major Krebs said, his voice tight. "She identified and exploited a procedural weakness. She's not playing the drill game. She's playing a different game altogether." Vance reached the stairwell to the second floor. It was a classic choke point. The security team had stationed 3 Marines there. The lead Marine challenged her. "This area is restricted. You need to turn around." Vance glanced at his name tape. "Lance Corporal Finley, you have a respiratory infection. Your breathing is shallow and wheezing. You're on duty while medically compromised. Who cleared you for watch?" The young Marine's eyes widened. How could she know? He had been to medical that morning. His surprise cost him. Vance didn't fight past him. She pointed behind him, up the stairs. "Is that a thermal sensor warning light?" It just flashed red. All 3 Marines instinctively glanced backward. It was a fraction of a second. When they looked back, Vance was no longer in front of them. She was already 4 steps up the staircase, moving with a silence that seemed impossible. She had used their own training, the instinct to check a potential equipment failure, against them. General Stone was now standing, gripping the railing of the observation platform. This was not going to plan. The crowd behind the tape was murmuring, some now openly cheering for the underdog lieutenant. On the second floor, the hallway leading to the SCIF was the final gauntlet. 4 Marines blocked the hall, and the door itself was guarded by a staff sergeant, a veteran of 2 combat tours. This was where the drill would end, Stone was sure, but Vance didn't enter the hallway. She stopped at a water fountain and drinking station at the top of the stairs. She examined the ceiling tiles, the air vent, the layout of the fluorescent lights. "She's stalling," Stone said, but there was no conviction in his voice. In the Security Operations Center, the warrant officer who had made the call earlier watched a different screen. It showed a thermal overlay of the building. Vance's heat signature was a bright blob at the top of the stairs, but the system was also tracking something else. A subtle, rhythmic pattern in her breathing and heart rate transmitted from a biosensor she wasn't authorized to have. The data was being cross-referenced against a classified database. A match was being processed. Back in the hallway, the staff sergeant growled into his radio. "Mockingbird 1, intruder is hesitating at top of stairwell north, awaiting engagement." Vance finally moved, but not toward the guards. She turned and opened an unmarked door labeled Electrical and Data, a utility closet. She stepped inside and closed the door. Now Stone smiled. "She's given up. She's hiding. End the drill, go extract her." But Major Krebs was staring at his building's schematic. "Sir, that closet, it's not just a closet. It shares a common wall with the SCIF's technical service chase, a space for cables and plumbing. So the interior wall is standard drywall, not the reinforced concrete of the SCIF itself." A tense minute passed. The security team converged on the closet door. The staff sergeant called out, "Lieutenant, drill is over, come out." "Silence." He nodded to a corporal who swung the door open. The closet was empty. A ceiling tile was slightly askew above a shelving unit. A bundle of fiber optic cables and a 2-inch water pipe ran vertically through a space just wide enough for a person. "She's in the walls," Krebs whispered, a mix of horror and professional awe. The radio traffic became frantic. "She's in the interstitial space. We have no visual. We need to locate." The communication was cut off by a new, calm voice over the general observation frequency. It was Vance. "Mockingbird Actual, this is Intruder. I am at the primary SCIF door. I have placed the training marker. The drill is complete. Total elapsed time, 6 minutes 42 seconds. A camera feed focused on the heavy, vault-like SCIF door. A bright orange training sticker was affixed squarely to its center. There was no sign of Vance. Her voice had come from the security team's own network. She had patched into their comms. The crowd erupted in shocked applause and whistles. General Stone's face was a thundercloud of purple rage. He snatched the radio from Krebs. This is General Stone. All security personnel, detain Lieutenant Vance immediately and bring her to me. This is no longer a drill. In the operations center, the warrant officer's computer chimed. The biometric match was complete. The data from Vance's biosensor matched a profile in a database code named Element. Clearance required, eyes only Delta. The profile name was not Vance. It was an alphanumeric string, GV7. He picked up the secure phone again. Ghost Viper is active. I say again, active. And the package just demonstrated a full suite of penetration protocols, requesting guidance. The voice on the other end was calm. Observe and contain. Do not let Stone escalate. A control team is en route. Back in the headquarters building, security Marines finally found Vance. She wasn't hiding. She was in a second-floor women's restroom, washing her hands. She looked up at the two bewildered sergeants in the doorway, dried her hands on a paper towel, and said, "I'm ready to see the general now." She was escorted back to the observation platform. The crowd parted, watching her pass with a new, hushed respect. Stone descended from the platform to meet her on the tarmac, Colonel Vickers and a seething Major Krebs in tow. "What was that, Lieutenant?" Stone's voice was low, dangerous. "How did you bypass secured systems? How did you access the service chase? That information is not available to your clearance level." "I used observational problem-solving, sir," Vance replied, her tone still neutral. "The building's schematics are not classified. The service panel was inadequately secured. The security team's procedures have predictable gaps." "Don't you dare lecture me on procedures," Stone exploded, spittle flying. "You hacked a military security system. I will have you charged with computer fraud and abuse. I will see you in Leavenworth." Master Guns Brady pushed through the crowd, unable to stay silent. "General Stone, sir, with respect, she didn't hack anything. She used a manual ground fault. That's basic electrical knowledge. And she outthought every Marine in that building. That's not a crime. That's talent we should be asking about, not court-martialing." Stone whirled on Brady. "You are out of line, Master Guns. One more word and I'll have your chevrons." Before Brady could respond, a new sound cut through the tension, the distinct thump-thump-thump of helicopter rotors. A sleek, unmarked black helicopter with no insignia flared over the flight line and settled onto the hot tarmac 30 yards away. Its side door slid open before the wheels fully touched. Three figures in dark civilian suits emerged, followed by a Marine Corps full colonel in dress blues, his chest heavy with ribbons. The colonel, a man with a sharp gaze and a stern demeanor, strode directly toward General Stone. The crowd fell utterly silent. This was not part of the drill. The colonel stopped before Stone and rendered a crisp salute, which Stone, bewildered, returned. "General Stone, I am Colonel James Thorne from the Office of the Inspector General of the Marine Corps. These are my associates from the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency." He gestured to the suited figures. "We need to speak with you immediately, and we need to speak with Lieutenant Vance." Stone's anger was momentarily eclipsed by confusion and a dawning, cold fear. The IG, the DCSA, this was about more than a spoiled drill. "Of course, Colonel, my office is." "Here will suffice, General," Thorne said, his voice allowing no argument. He turned to Vance. "Lieutenant Vance, are you harmed in any way?" "No, sir." "Very well, please wait with Master Gunnery Sergeant Brady." It was an order, isolating her with the one senior NCO who had shown her support. Thorne then focused on Stone, his voice dropping but carrying in the dead quiet. "General, you just ordered the detention of a service member participating in a lawful training exercise authorized by your own command. You publicly threatened her with incarceration. You have potentially compromised an ongoing matter of great sensitivity. We will discuss this in detail. Now." Stone looked from Thorne's impassive face to the DCSA agents who were scanning the crowd to Vance, who stood silently with Brady. The reality crashed down upon him. The talk specifications, the weapon handling, the penetration of a secure facility in minutes. This was not an overachieving logistics officer. This was a manifestation of a terrible professional miscalculation. And as Colonel Thorne gestured for him to walk toward the waiting helicopter, a new, more horrifying question formed in General Harlan Stone's mind. If she's not who she appears to be, then who the hell have I just been mocking? And what is she really doing on my base? The flight to the base headquarters in the unmarked helicopter took 3 minutes, but for General Stone, it felt like an eternity in a silent, pressurized box. Colonel Thorne and the DC-ESA agent said nothing. They simply watched him, their expressions unreadable. Below, he saw personnel pointing up at the unusual aircraft, the story already metastasizing across the base. His command, his reputation, was unraveling before they even landed. They did not take him to his own spacious office. They escorted him to a secure conference room in the headquarters basement, a room used for classified briefings. The door closed with a heavy thud. One of the agents set a digital recorder on the table. The other placed a folder, thick and plain, next to it. Colonel Thorne took the lead. General Stone, we are here concerning Lieutenant Mara Vance and your actions involving her over the last 2 hours. We will record this conversation. Do you understand? I understand, Stone said, his voice unsteady, but I demand to know what this is about. That lieutenant disrupted a security drill, tampered with. Stop, Thorne's word was a whip crack. You are not being questioned about her actions. You are being questioned about yours. You will answer my questions. Clear. Stone swallowed, nodded. You publicly mocked Lieutenant Vance's rank and person this morning during an official formation. Is that correct? It was informal banter, morale building. You asked her detailed technical questions outside her job scope, intending to provoke a failure. Correct. I was testing her knowledge base, as any commander might. You then ordered her to participate in a high-stakes security penetration drill as a punitive measure, not a training evaluation. Correct. Stone said nothing. Thorne leaned forward. The drill parameters were not designed for a single individual. You set an impossible task with the intent of public humiliation. This constitutes abusive treatment, a violation of Article 93 of the UCMJ. Do you understand the charge? The air left Stone's lungs. Abusive treatment for a training exercise. The intent matters, General, and we have multiple witnesses, including Master Gunnery Sergeant Brady and Colonel Vickers, who perceived it as punitive. Now, the most serious matter. After she succeeded at the impossible task you set, you ordered her detention and threatened her with court-martial and imprisonment. In front of dozens of witnesses, you attempted to use your authority to punish excellence because it bruised your ego. That is conduct unbecoming an officer. And it is the least of your problems. Thorne opened the plain folder. He slid a single photograph across the table. It was a grainy, long-range image of a woman in desert camouflage, her face painted, holding a scoped rifle. The face was younger, harder, but unmistakably Mara Vance. She was standing in a rocky landscape that Stone, a veteran of the Middle East, recognized instantly, the Helmand province of Afghanistan. What is this? Stone whispered. That is Lieutenant Vance. 5 years ago, during Operation Freedom Sentinel, her role there was not logistics. Thorne slid a second document. It was a citation, the formatting familiar, a Navy Cross recommendation. The name was redacted, but the details were searing. For extraordinary heroism while serving as a Special Operations Target Analyst attached to a Joint Special Operations Task Force, exposed to enemy fire for over 12 hours while directing precision strikes, personally eliminated 3 enemy combatants at close quarters to protect a wounded teammate. Stone felt the room spin. A Navy Cross, the nation's second highest award for valor. This can't be real, he breathed. Her award was classified. The mission was classified. Her entire career for the last 6 years has been classified under special access program called Element. She is not a logistics officer, general. She is a decorated special operations intelligence operative, cross-trained in surveillance, penetration, and direct action. Her current assignment here is a non-operational cover, a cool-down period mandated after an extended high-stress deployment cycle. Her presence was a secret. Until you decided to put her through a live-fire test of the very skills she's supposed to be resting from. The horror crystallized, cold and sharp. He hadn't been bullying a nobody, he had been torturing a war hero, a ghost, and he had forced her to blow her own cover. The code name, Stone said, the memory of the security officer's phone call slamming back into him. Ghost Viper. Thorne's eyes narrowed. How do you know that designation? I overheard a security chief. He said it on a call. The two DCS agents exchanged a look. One spoke for the first time, his voice flat. That is a critical breach. The code name is compartmentalized. Your security chief should not have spoken it aloud, and you should not have heard it. That information is now in an unauthorized chain of custody. You. Stone was drowning. I didn't ask for any of this. She was posing as a junior officer. How was I to know? You weren't, Thorne said coldly. That was the point. You were never meant to know. Your job was to command the base, not conduct inquisitions. Your lack of knowledge does not excuse your conduct. It defines its recklessness. By forcing her to reveal her capabilities, you have potentially compromised an asset and a program. The DCSA is now assessing the damage. Every person who witnessed that drill is a potential security variable. Your little game may have just endangered Lieutenant Vance's long-term safety. A knock at the door. A Marine captain entered, handed Thorne a note, and left. Thorne read it, his jaw tightening. He looked at Stone with something akin to pity. It seems the situation is more urgent than we thought. Lieutenant Vance has just been extracted from the base by the control team. She is being moved to a secure location. Your command, General, is hereby placed under the temporary authority of Colonel Vickers, pending the outcome of this investigation. You are to remain in your quarters, effectively confined, until further notice. You will speak to no one about this matter. Is that understood? Stripped of command, confined to quarters, Stone could only nod, his world in ashes. But as Thorne and the agent stood to leave, the second agent paused at the door. One more thing, General. The biometric alert triggered by Lieutenant Vance's stress levels during your banter didn't just notify us. It created an activity flag on a monitoring system at U.S. Special Operations Command. They've been reviewing the helmet cam and security footage from the drill. Their assessment is coming, and they take the compromise of their assets very personally. The door closed, leaving General Harlan Stone alone with the photograph of a warrior he had laughed at, and the chilling certainty that his career was not just over, it might be the smallest of his problems. Across the base, in a secure hangar used for sensitive air operations, Mara Vance sat in a sterile briefing room. She had changed into civilian clothes, jeans, and a plain black sweater. Before her was a man she knew well, her handler from the Element program, a former SEAL commander named Ronan. "You blew the doors off, kid," Ronan said, a faint smile on his weathered face. 6 minutes, 42 seconds. That's a new record for that building, I'm told. It was inefficient, Vance replied, her tone analytical. I used 3 unnecessary interactions. I could have shaved 90 seconds. Ronan laughed softly. Always the critic. The point is, you responded correctly to an untenable situation. Stone forced your hand. The program acknowledges that, but we have a new problem. The cat's out of the bag. Half the base saw you turn their security force into a joke. The Ghost Viper code name was uttered on an unsecure line. Your cover here is burnt. Vance absorbed this. Her father, a retired Master Chief, was in a long-term care facility in San Diego, just 20 minutes from this base. This non-operational posting was to be near him. What's the directive? Options are on the table. Full extraction, new identity, relocation, possibly back to an active operational tier. Or, Ronan paused, we could leverage the exposure. Leverage it how? Stone's incompetence and abuse are a matter of record now. The IG and DCSA have him, but he's still a general officer with friends. There could be pressure to soft-pedal this, to protect the institution's image. A quiet retirement for him, a transfer for you, business as usual. Vance's eyes hardened. Unacceptable. I agree, so the alternative is we go public. Not with your classified history, but with the facts of today. The mockery, the abusive drill, your success, his meltdown. We let the story, the right story, go viral within the military ecosystem. It becomes a case study in toxic leadership versus silent competence. It burns your cover completely, but it might also burn out a systemic rot, and it would guarantee Stone doesn't just get a slap on the wrist. And my father. We move him, best private facility in the country, full care, wherever you go. Vance looked down at her hands, the same hands that had steadied a rifle in Helmand and carefully grounded a wire hours ago. She thought of the young Lance Corporal with the respiratory infection, too afraid to call in sick. She thought of Master Guns Brady, risking his career to speak a fraction of the truth. This wasn't just about her or Stone. It was about every person that man would command if he faced no consequences. Do it, she said, her voice quiet but final. Ronan nodded. It'll mean you never serve in the shadows again. Your face will be known. Your future in clandestine work is over. I served in the shadows to protect people, Vance said, looking up. Sometimes protecting people means stepping into the light. At that moment, in the base's public affairs office, a young corporal named Alvarez was editing video for the base's internal news feed. He had been in the crowd. He had recorded the entire confrontation on the flight line and the dramatic end with the black helicopter on his personal phone. The video was shaky, but the audio was crystal clear. General Stone's mocking laughter, his threatening commands. Alvarez knew the rules. He should delete it, but he thought of the lieutenant's calm dignity. He thought of the general's purple rage. He attached the video file to an email. He didn't send it to the news. He sent it to a secure inbox for the Marine Corps Times, a military publication known for holding leadership accountable. The subject line read, "Leadership Failure at Murama." He hit send. The chain of events was now irreversible. The institutional investigation led by Colonel Thorne was one path. The court of public opinion, fueled by a damning video, was another, and both were racing toward the same target, General Harlan Stone. But in a secure facility in Tampa, Florida, at U.S. Special Operations Command, a different kind of meeting was concluding. A panel of senior operators had reviewed the footage of Ghost Viper's impromptu performance. Their concern wasn't justice or publicity, it was utility. An asset with that skill set, even with a compromised cover, was too valuable to simply retire. A four-star general cleared his throat. The lieutenant's tactical proficiency is undeniable. Her cover in conventional forces is untenable. However, her demonstrated ability to operate under pressure, to think around obstacles, and to exploit systemic weaknesses is precisely what we need for a new initiative. The program is called Red Cell. It tests our own security, our own assumptions, by thinking like the most capable adversaries. She wouldn't be hiding her skills. She'd be using them openly as a teacher and a penetrator for us. He looked around the table. We extract her, we debrief her, we offer her a new contract, not as a hidden ghost, but as a recognized expert, a hammer to find our weak nails. Back in Murama, as the sun began to set, Master Guns Brady stood outside the secure hangar, smoking a cigarette he'd given up years ago. He saw the unmarked black SUV pull out with Vance and her handler inside. He didn't know where she was going, but he knew she wasn't coming back to the logistics office. He flicked the cigarette away. A phrase his first sergeant had told him decades ago echoed in his mind. Sometimes, Brady, the quietest person in the room, isn't shy. They're just assessing, and once they're done assessing, they change the game. The game had been changed. The base was buzzing with rumors, the official channels silent. General Stone was in his quarters, staring at the walls. Colonel Vickers was trying to steady a rattled command, and a video file was traveling through a server in Virginia, about to ignite a firestorm that would reach all the way to the Pentagon. The silence that General Stone had wished for was finally settling over the base, but it wasn't the silence of respect. It was the quiet, tense calm before a verdict is delivered, and for everyone involved, the real consequences were just beginning to dawn. The video sent by Corporal Alvarez did not simply go viral within the military. It exploded across the internet. Within 24 hours, the shaky cell phone footage of General Stone's mocking laughter, the tense security drill, and the dramatic arrival of the black helicopter had been viewed millions of times. The narrative wrote itself, the arrogant general versus the quiet, capable lieutenant. The Marine Corps Public Affairs Office, caught completely off guard, had no containment strategy. The story was now in the wild. and with it, the fate of General Harlan Stone. 1 week after the incident, a formal change of command ceremony was held at Marine Corps Station Murama, but it was not the celebratory event typically held for an outgoing commander. It was a somber corrective proceeding. Under cloudless sky, the base's battalion colors were passed from General Stone to Colonel Vickers. Stone stood rigidly in his dress blues, his face a mask of stoic humiliation. He received no award, no Legion of Merit for his service. He was simply relieved of duty. The official statement cited personal reasons for his immediate retirement. Everyone in formation and everyone watching the live stream knew the truth. Following the ceremony, Stone was escorted to a waiting sedan. He was not driven to a farewell reception. He was driven off the base, for the last time, to face the formal Inspector General's inquiry that would determine if he would retain his pension and avoid criminal charges under the UCMJ. The silence from his former peers in the General Officer Corps was deafening. No one came to his defense. The institution had cut him loose. Meanwhile, in a private room at the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, Mara Vance sat with her father. Richard Vance, a retired Master Chief with 30 years of service, was frail but alert. A tablet computer lay on the bed between them, showing news coverage of the change of command. "You stirred the pot, kid," her father said, his voice raspy but warm, "just like I taught you." "I didn't mean for it to go this public, Dad." "The hell you didn't," he chuckled, then coughed. "You saw a bully abusing his rank. You saw a system that would let him. You applied precise force to the weakest point. That's not an accident, that's strategy." He reached over and squeezed her hand. "I'm proud, and don't you worry about me. These new docs here are the best I've ever had." Her handler, Ronan, had kept his word. Her father had been seamlessly transferred to THE Chinese letter facility, his care fully covered by provisions within the Element program. A knock at the door. Ronan entered, accompanied by Colonel James Thorne. Thorne nodded respectfully to Master Chief Vance, then turned to Mara. "The inquiries are complete, Lieutenant. The Secretary of the Navy has reviewed the findings. General Stone will retire at his current rank, but with a formal letter of reprimand in his permanent file. He will forfeit 20% of his pension. He will not serve in any civilian defense capacity. It's a softer landing than some wanted, but it's a permanent stain." Vance nodded. It was justice, if not vengeance. "For you," Thorne continued, "the path is different. Your cover within the conventional force is irrecoverable, but your skills are not. You have two offers. The first is from U.S. Special Operations Command. They want you for a new Red Cell program. You would be a certified adversary, testing the physical and cyber security of critical installations. Think of it as making your drill performance a full-time job. It's challenging, well compensated, and above board." "And the second?" Vance asked. "The second comes from right here, from Colonel Vickers and from Master Gunnery Sergeant Brady. They want you to come back to Murama, not as Ghost Viper, not as a hidden asset, but as Captain Mara Vance. They've pushed through an accelerated promotion based on your demonstrated expertise and previous classified record. They want you to establish and lead a new base security enhancement detachment. You would train their security forces, design penetration tests, and turn the lessons from this entire mess into institutional knowledge. You would be home. You could visit your father every day." Vance looked at her father. He gave a slight, approving nod. She had spent years in the shadows, serving a distant, abstract concept of security. Here was a chance to serve people, to fix a broken culture in a place that needed it. "I'll take the second offer," she said, "sir." Thorne smiled, a genuine one. "I thought you might. Welcome home, Captain." 2 months later, Captain Mara Vance stood in front of a classroom in Murama's training center. Before her sat 30 Marines from the security battalion, including the very staff sergeant she had outmaneuvered in the drill. There was no hostility in the room, only intense curiosity. "Forget what you saw in the videos," she began, her voice confident without being loud. "That was a demonstration under duress. What we will build here is a system. We will start with observation. The moment you stop truly seeing the people and the environment you're guarding, you've already been defeated." In the back of the room, Master Guns Brady leaned against the wall, arms crossed, a satisfied look on his face. Colonel Vickers observed from the doorway. The base was changing. Security protocols had been overhauled. A new, confidential reporting system for abusive leadership had been installed. The silence that had fallen over the base after the incident wasn't one of fear, it was of focused recalibration. But the story had one final, hidden twist. 6 months after the public scandal died down, a sealed envelope arrived at General Stone's home in Virginia. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was a copy of a duty roster from the new Base Security Enhancement Detachment at Miramar. Listed as a guest instructor for a module on leadership ethics and consequences was a familiar name, Master Chief Richard Vance, USN, RET. The course date was circled. There was no threat, no note, just the roster. The message was exquisitely clear. The man whose daughter Stone had mocked would now be teaching Marines at Stone's former command about the cost of abuse. The humiliation was eternal, and it would be professionally curated. Stone crumpled the paper, but he could not crumple the truth. He had laughed at a junior officer's rank, and in doing so, he had summoned the very judgment he thought his stars made him immune to. The base had fallen silent for him forever. And Captain Mara Vance, once known as Ghost Viper, walked the flight line at dusk. She was no longer a ghost. She was a teacher, a daughter, a Marine. Her war had changed form, but her purpose was clearer than ever. She had traded the silence of the shadows for the powerful, resonant quiet of respect earned. And in that quiet, she was finally, completely home. The story of General Stone and Captain Vance is more than a satisfying tale of comeuppance. It is a stark blueprint of how institutions function and how they fail. It reveals the fragile distance between authority earned and authority abused, and the hidden currents of talent that flow beneath the surface of every rigid hierarchy. General Stone saw only rank and gender. He saw a ledger of power where he was at the top. But in any complex system, the most dangerous assumption is that you know all the variables. Captain Vance was a variable he never accounted for. Her training, her discipline, her very presence was a silent audit of his command, and he failed it spectacularly. His laughter wasn't just disrespect, it was the sound of a system cracking under the weight of its own arrogance. But this story asks a broader question that lingers long after the final verdict. How many others are out there, not necessarily decorated operatives in disguise, but simply capable people, underestimated and overlooked, waiting for their moment to demonstrate that respect cannot be demanded, it can only be earned. In the military, in corporations, in any structure built on rank, the true measure of leadership isn't how many people salute you. It's what you learn when you finally stop talking and start observing. Captain Vance traded a shadow war for a different kind of fight. She is now part of the immune system, teaching the institution to recognize its own weaknesses before an adversary exploits them. In the end, the silence she brought to the base was the most powerful sound of all. The quiet of a lesson being learned, of respect being rebuilt, one honest assessment at a time. If this story of hidden strength and visible consequences resonated with you, there are more like it waiting. Real stories of quiet professionals, unexpected turns, and the moment potential is realized. For those narratives, make sure you've subscribed to this channel and turned on notifications, because the world is full of people who are more than they seem, and the moment of revelation is always worth witnessing. Thanks for watching.